Howdy, of you delicious people. I am here today to review Night of the Animated Dead. So, evidently, a lot of people will probably remember the movie Night of the Living Dead, and a lot of people will have known that that movie had gone through several different iterations, whether it was the black and white version, whether it was um, the much more current version of the movie, let's just say. Uh, and so going into this, what are people going to eventually see within this film? Well, in all honesty, this does feel like the black and white version of Night of the Living Dead, but it seems like they eventually do some slight tweaks to the story. There are certain parts where eventually it is not exactly like the original or the remake that was to happen afterwards. Like, they have a slight tweaking of the story, which I really thoroughly enjoyed, as well as the number of voice actors that are also to be attached to this film, because I really enjoyed it. Here's the thing, though. I have seen where this actually is. I saw this for absolutely free. I went into an app that I've been using called Yes Movies. It shows in the logo, it says Yes Movies and Shows, or Movies and Series. And, like, more than likely that's hard to find on Google Play. You could probably go out of your way to go and Google search it and find that app. Excuse me. But also, you can go into an app called Letter C Movies, and you should be able to Google search that also, because it's kind of hard to find it bizarrely on actual like a Google Play Store. But if you search for either one of those, download those, you'll be able to see anything really just for free. Any kind of series, any kind of whatever for absolutely free. There isn't any fees. I've been using those apps fairly reliably for many of months now. So go ahead and check out either one of those out. Like, I kind of more recently watched the Yes Movie app, but like also you can just go ahead and also like experiment and try to find apps. If you go into just the word movie and then you go app, you can probably search for any number of things and eventually find something that is easy enough for you to use, and you should be able to watch pretty much anything for however long that you want to go ahead and try to find something. Whichever saves you a lot of money at the end of all this. Because where is this movie at? Well, technically, right now, I believe it is either on Amazon or it's on Vudu, VUDU, for $14.99 right now. And I'm like, this does not garner that price for $14.99 of a remake film that just has slightly tweaks in story. Because really this feels like a copy and paste of mostly the very original black and white Night of the Living Dead, but there are story tweaks, and then there's also like an ending that seems different from the original, but also quite similar. And I'll have to just kind of bring that up when eventually we get into spoilers. I really like Night of the Living Dead. I really like just any kind of iteration of it, because I've seen a bulk. Like, I don't think I saw all, but I saw a bulk of the original black and white variation, and then I think, reviewed on this channel the remade version of that film. And so now I got to watch this version of this film, which is technically, again, like the black and white version. So either way, if you would rather just say, well, hey, I don't want to go and I don't want to spend this money, just go ahead and watch the black and white version. It's fairly similar. And if you can find that for absolutely free, or in a more convenient way to say that you've seen that movie, go ahead and do so. But with that said, let me talk about the spoiler version of this movie, because this has been out numerous times over. We've had two shots at this same movie. Now we have the animated version, and so really what ends up happening, if you've never heard of this thing before, what is Night of the Animated Dead? Well, we of course eventually have people who kind of go out through their normal days. We have a girl named Barbara who is to eventually go out to put flowers upon a family member's grave. And then all of a sudden there seems to be zombies that are starting to pop out of the graves. It kind of seems like this kind of goes in a flimsy route of, at some points in time, of not really going, and like you're seeing people fully fledgedly crawl out of graves and stuff like that. There's some stuff that I kind of felt like, man, they could have done a better job in this part of the film. And there was a lot of times where I had that consistent grievance of like, there should have been a better part here, but it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like they were really going out of the way to try to reinvent this story. Or it kind of feels like there's several other versions of this that kind of feel the same, if not better. So, but again, there is that quite shift towards the end of the movie that I kind of enjoy a little bit more, even though reasonably people could have that conundrum or that thought process of just going like, I don't know if it was a better story. So, comparing this movie to the remade film, I don't know if like this movie is better than the remade film that had been remade. But like I could probably say that this movie feels better, of course, than the black and white version that it really is to adapt from. Simply because reasonably, I would say that there are things that they could do here, which of course they didn't do there, or slightly changed, or whichever. But I don't know. I also had fun watching this adaptation, and plus it's only an hour and 10 some odd minutes, and so that's why I couldn't really justify also the $14.99. I'm like, $14.99 for an hour and 10 minutes? Like, you're insane. Like, that is an insane price. I would say, like, at least, like, it'd probably have to be, like, ballparkingly, like, $9.99 or something like that. Like, at least, like, maybe just $10 for an hour and 10 minutes? I don't know. I guess I don't know how much animated movies are nowadays, but I don't know. I guess that just seems like outlandish of a price. But anyways, what do I know? So going into this, so we eventually start to have all these people, eventually one way or another, drive their way to this home, this deserted home, and all of a sudden start to bunker down, try to fortify this home, which I really kind of like that. I really enjoy the whole fact of people are just not like just bunkering down in this home and just kind of waiting for things to happen. No, they're actually putting up boards and they're nailing things down, and they're trying to eventually keep these zombies from getting into this home. But also, here's the problem that I also have with this movie. We have them board everything up. Why not just go up a flight of stairs to go into a room of a higher vantage point if these zombies are really to come the way they are? It just feels like eventually, when these zombies are really coming through this home, it really doesn't seem like they had a good enough game plan for me. Plus also, like, it seems like this cellar in this variation seemed like an actual, like, panic room, where all of a sudden, like, the cellar door was to blend into the wall, and you couldn't really tell it was a door until someone was to like open it up and like, hey, look at here, we're here now. So like I thought that was interesting. There were slight tweaks of stuff that happens to characters because I've seen like not the complete version of the black and white. So if someone was to tell me that every single thing that happens in this movie also happens in the black and white, I would just be like, okay, then they completely just did the exact same kind of movie. But there's a lot of familiar stuff that they did that obviously, like when I saw Ben kind of cracking people with that pipe of his when he kind of comes into this home originally, I'm like, okay, I saw that moment. I've seen that thing there where again eventually like I've seen like bits and pieces, but then eventually I think towards the end I started to see the story drastically start to shift little by little, but um, again, people could probably tell me differently. But I'm just gonna kind of just mention what happens to all this story and spoilers, anyways. So if you want to hear if the black and white version is exactly like this one, or maybe there's some kind of dips and changes and whatever, and this might be much more interesting to you to hear this all, to see this all being played out, then without a doubt, let's go into the double five time territory because it's about that time again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you to spoil this movie. So, very beginning of the film, we are to have both, of course, Barbara and Johnny go off to this funeral to put flowers onto the grave of their loved one who had died. Johnny is just kind of mentioning, like, man, how many times we probably bought the same flowers over and over and over again to eventually just have them die and whatever. And so, after them going to this graveyard, we still have the part where Johnny is to mention, like, hey, they're coming to get you, Barbara. They're coming to get you. And all of a sudden, we have this one zombie character that just kind of walks into the fray of things. I'm like, man, they could have really done something with like the animated budget of this film. They could have actually had like a bunch of people all coming out of the grave. They could have like had somebody have like their arm up, their fist up, or whatever, because they probably couldn't have done that in actual live action. They could have played around with this a lot to just kind of show like 6 to 7 or 10 different graves of like everybody just starting to reach out and trying to get out of their graves. That would have been cool, but they did nothing here. They just showed some guy just walking around, hey. And like I would have thought also that they would have tried to do something really cool with the zombies, but it doesn't feel like that at all. Like, it just feels like there's a lot of times where you'll just kind of see like some rib cage, or you'll just see like certain kind of bones popping out or whatever. But there isn't anything that I was like blown away about for the design of any of these zombies. I was kind of disappointed. I was like, here's like, dude, we've had decades upon decades of zombie movies, and they could have done something really cool here to make these zombies really stick out or stand out or whatever, but it just kind of feels like they look severely bland for this being the way it is. And like, you could have really just, and it doesn't matter if they could have just said, well, we were trying to stay true to the adaptation of the movie and not go too overboard and whatever. Like, dude, this is to be a thing that's to be taken and done for 2021. Like, and like up the ante of how these zombies are to look. Go crazy with it. Don't try to just make it look exactly identically like the film, because that's just boring. Like, try, like, considering you have the ability to do this and have fun with it and not make it the exact same film, have fun with it, but they didn't. It just seemed very boring. And for the most point, this movie just seemed kind of just very bland, or just kind of just not exactly like, from watching a black and white film to now watching this. So it's kind of like not really seeing much of a huge, like, oh, this is a real coming of age thing where, like, man, they really just drastically, like, made a huge amount of sense to have this thing get adapted and change the way it was done, or like like, no, it just felt like whoever was to have animated this didn't have much budget on it. In all brutal honesty, it just feels like the thing that they just chucked out there, because Night of the Living Dead, like, has kind of gone everywhere. Like, not Night of the Living Dead has been consistently just put through a number of, like, mobile games and all kinds of things just to re-put something out there so people can eventually get money still off of this thing for whatever reason. So, with that said, so eventually Barbara is to go into her car and, of course, drive off after seeing her brother eventually go and, like, break his neck again, like in the original film. And so Barbara ends up running off because the zombie pushes Johnny and breaks his neck. And we just see blood coming from his eyes and his nose and his mouth and whatever. And so Barbara just drives off, and, like, every bit of this is to look like the characters from the black and white film. Like, Barbara, of course, looks like the black and white Barbara. The Like, Ben obviously looks like the Ben from the black and white Night of the Living Dead. So most of these characters are to look identical for the most point from the black and white Night of the Living Dead movie, unless there might be some slight tweaks, just because, like, hey, let's have, instead of this character being a blonde, let's have her be a brunette, or so on or so forth. I don't know. Because, again, eventually I'll probably have to go and watch the black and white Night of the Living Dead again, and just kind of just be like, okay, there are some slight tweaks here, but I don't know. Plus, also, like, they had to really change stuff for time in this movie, obviously, because hour and 10 whole minutes. So eventually, we at first have Barbara making it to that house, and she eventually ends up kind of, like, going through the house trying to, like, find anybody. Then Ben makes it there with his, like, his little I want to say it's like tire iron. I'm hoping that's correct, because I wanted to say, like, a crowbar, but, like, that's not it. It's like a tire iron. So I want to say, like, I remember in the original, like, black and white thing, how Barbara was just this woman that was just completely just dead inside. And, like, this girl, for, like, a bulk of the movie, and I think that was the reason why I lost, like, interest whatsoever in the original black and white version, was because Barbara was just this zombie like character, and she was still alive. She was still she was still this normal person, but she was just, like, catatonic for a lot of the movie. Or there would just be a lot of times where I would just find that character to just be annoying. She was to scream way too often, or it was just being like, God, I just don't like this character, and that's what is killing the movie for me. When they continued to keep going to that one character, and I was like, God, she's just like dead inside. So, which I think they kind of, like, tweak Barbara in this movie to make her not be so, like, unbearable, which I liked. Because she was just like through the whole through a bulk of that film, of which that I saw, and I was just, I'm sick of this person, I'm sick of this character. So eventually we have Ben, who crowbars through zombies and tries to close doors, and then eventually tries to board everything up. And so eventually Ben is to desperately try to tell Barbara, hey, go and get some wood. We're going to board everything up. And Barbara does none of that. She just continues to look throughout the house. And then she comes right back to Ben and then holds down something that he's going to board up. And I'm like, wait a minute. Didn't Ben just tell you to go and get some wood? And it just seems like the thing that annoyed me most about the black and white version was that Ben was doing all of the work. Kind of like in the remake, where it just seems like Ben was doing all of the work and everybody was just sitting back, just going like, yeah, like, we're probably going to die at some point, right? Like, yeah, you probably are. Like, Ben was having to do so many freaking things, and I'm like, God, I'm so exhausted watching this one character have to carry this whole movie upon his back while everyone else is just this person that's just waiting to die, or just like this person is like, no, I'm just gonna go in the cellar and I'm just gonna sit there while like this guy is basically protecting us from death. Because here's the thing. When we get to the whole cellar moment, when eventually those people pop out of the basement, here is my conclusion. If I were Ben, I would tell these people, how are you going to be able to be protected down in the cellar if I have a torch in my hand and I get eaten by one of these things? I'm going to drop this torch and this house is going to burn. So you're going to burn inside of it and you're going to die. Oh, isn't that bad? Because you'll have nowhere to go. You're going to die. So shouldn't that have been the biggest argument in this movie for them to justify having everyone help Ben's character? Because really, being in the cellar is a stupid decision, and Ben could just light that whole house on fire and walk away, and everyone will be dead. And Ben will just go on to his truck and drive the heck out of there and be off to go and find safety. And just be like, well, F these people. Like, freaking, I just torched that house and ran like heck. And then he would have survived. But no, like he was trying to fortify the place. He was trying to stay there for as long as possible, but zombies kept on coming because they made too much freaking noise also. Because once you start shooting a rifle off consistently, that thing makes noise because they couldn't come up with a customizable silencer for that rifle, because how could they have? Because they didn't have that knowledge, or no one could have. But anyways, so eventually, while Ben is kind of fortifying things, we end up finding out that Ben was to be at this diner, and across the street from the diner there was to be this gas station that all of a sudden had this gas tanker that ended up, I guess maybe his brakes went out or something like that, and he ends up just crashing into this gas station. And all of a sudden, all this gas is starting to pour out of this gas tanker. And all of a sudden, these zombies are all just walking through this gas. And Ben is like, hey guys, what are you doing? That gas tanker is going to explode. And the driver can't get out of this gas tanker because his door is locked to where he it's wedged or whatever to where he can't get out. So all of a sudden, this gas station and this tanker and whatever, it all explodes. And so all these zombies are just standing over while they're burning alive by this gasoline. And so they fall over, any number of them. And so all of a sudden, Ben is to find that there are to be zombies like coming out of this diner basically. Well, they're around the diner, but still, like, I would assume I would have to rationalize in my head that they came out of the diner, because wouldn't have Ben have seen these zombies coming towards him if they were coming from anywhere else besides right from the diner door? But again, the rationalization of just an animated thing where all of a sudden you just see these people popping out of nowhere, and you're just like, wait a minute, like, shouldn't they have all been coming from out of the diner door, or shouldn't they have been coming from like one obvious location instead of a place that doesn't quite all make sense? But like, it's the way to buy time because this is only an hour and 10 minutes long. So Ben was to go and see this truck, and he was listening to the radio of what's going on. So all of a sudden, Ben is to be surrounded by zombies, 20, 30 of them, maybe a million of them, because it's an animated movie. It was about 20 to 30, somewhere around there. Probably less than that, probably 20. So Ben, probably like 5. There was only like one zombie, and he was like, you know what, I'm just having none of that. Maybe the zombie was chopped in half. You know, maybe it was half a zombie. I'm joking. So, there's about like 20. Anyways, pushing on. So, Ben goes in his truck and drives off, and that leads us to this situation where Ben is going and like dismantling tables and eventually using a table leg to eventually have a torch for himself. So while like that's going on, eventually Barbara is to go through the house, and eventually that is to open up a cellar door, and that's when we of course have Harry Cooper, who ends up coming out and kind of seeing what's going on. And so that's of course when we have Ben, who is to argue with this guy, hey, like, you obviously heard us up here, like, trying to fortify this house and try to like save your butts from this, and you guys didn't think to come up here and do anything. So we have Harry that is adjusting this radio station that's in the home. Jesus. Sorry. I, of course, get phone calls while I'm doing a review. Every single sound that my phone does is like really loud, so it immediately scares the crap out of me. And it shouldn't, but still, like, it's always like so absurdly loud. Anyways, pushing on from my phone call. It was a scam thing, it doesn't matter. So eventually, what I remember from certain versions of this movie is the guys were to eventually admit that eventually, like, they say at first that they didn't hear anything, and then all of a sudden, every time that their story changes, it's that they did hear something, but they weren't going to act on it. And so then Ben usually gets upset because it's like, wait a minute, it's like, so you did hear us. So you did, like, you probably heard somebody getting murdered out here, and you decided to do nothing. You decided to play God and just say, well, I'm not going to help those people. To where I think we get Tom kind of feeling bad about that whole situation, that he too was a person that just decided to do jack crap nothing. If we were going to have some time to be put in here, I think it would have been interesting to get the point of view of the people in the cellar while things were going on. Because obviously, if you've seen this movie numerous times, you know that there are people coming from a cellar at some point in this film, if you've seen it twice or whichever. So I would have liked, like, the cellar point of view of things, where, like, I don't think we get that nearly enough in this movie. We really just get one scene, and that's really about it. Where, like, in other variations, we get, like, kind of a little bit more scenes of something or another, but because eventually Ben needs to go all the way downstairs to get more wood in the basement. slash cellar. So, and there seems to have been more scenes in that movie than this one. So, because time constraints, I guess. So, they're bickering back and forth, basically just about like, well, hey, uh, like if you heard a sound, you could have done something. But, anyways, pushing on. So, eventually, we get where we have also this moment before the whole cellar thing where eventually Ben takes this chair, like this, like I would probably call it like a mixture of like like if you were to have taken like a recliner and chucked it out there and doused it on fire to, I guess, have some of the zombies just go, hey, look, fire. Because we had a moment where Ben was to look out the window and see that the zombies were trying to take out the truck's like headlights. And I'm like, why would have Ben have kept his headlights on for his car? Like, you would have basically killed the battery, and how would they have ever have gotten out of this whole situation if this guy's lights were still on? But I don't know, maybe that's just me that whatever. So yeah, so pushing on. So eventually Ben is to get this torch, and the next move is to have both Tom and Judy go off to go and get gas in this truck, which I'm like, seems like there's plenty enough gas. Why do we have to get gas in the I don't know. There's a whole having to like justify a lot of things in this movie. But like we have also Ben who's like, hey, like we need to get the heck out of here. Maybe we'll go and get that girl and bring her up here, and we'll like carry her to wherever she needs to go. Like that's what we'll do. We'll go and we'll take this girl and we'll carry her to wherever she needs to go. If we have to run a mile to go and get Harry's car, which is bizarrely flipped over for whatever reason, which I think he probably made that up. He probably didn't even have a car. And so, I don't know, there's not a real good justification for, anyways, pushing on. For going after a car that's flipped over, because what if it exploded? What if it, like, they're running after a car that they don't know the condition of the car. Uh, Anybody kind of think, I don't know. Like, plus also, like, is this house really just in the middle of nowhere? Like, when it seems that the sheriffs have, like, a good walking distance to make it, or a not so bad walking distance to this home, I'm just like, well, anyways, pushing on. So, Ben goes on into the truck, and so Judy decides at the last second to go with them to get in this truck to try and drive off. And Tom is looking at Judy, and he's like, "You're coming along with us?" Because Tom goes and talks to Judy, and like is to kind of have this whole like dialogue, kind of mentioning how like they need to go and they need to do this. So and then they kiss, and so Tom goes off, and so Judy goes into the car and closes the door. But here's the thing: her jacket that she's wearing is to be stuck within the car door. So they go and they run, they drive with Ben on, like in the back. He's just kind of hanging on. He's holding on. So, like I've seen parts where eventually Ben is to fly out of the back of the car and then have to defend himself, and then both Tom and Judy have like to go and get the gas, and then they end up doing the stupid like thing of like, oh, let's go and shoot this gas lock off, and all of a sudden they ignite the freaking the gas that's uh, in this little gas thing, and then that blows up and that kills both Tom and Judy. And so this still kind of plays out with both of them eventually ending up dying. Because here's what happens. So Ben is to go and shoot the lock perfectly. And so they end up going and are trying to get gas in this car. But then all of a sudden, there's to be this accident where eventually the there's to be gas that's on the ground that ends up lighting up on fire, and all of a sudden, eventually, the hood of this car ends up getting lit up on fire, and so eventually, uh, Tom and Judy try to drive off from where this gas station is, from this little gas station pump. So they drive off on a car that's on fire with the with fire on top of hood of car, and they're thinking, you know what, this is a bright idea to just try to drive with fire on the hood of a car. Drive with the car while car is on fire. That seems brilliant, right? So these people are dumb. And so eventually what ends up happening anyways is that Judy ends up uh, getting her coat stuck in her door so she can't get out. It's horrifying that she cannot get out of this car. So what eventually ends up happening is this car eventually does explode, and both of these people lose their heads and die. Basically, that's what ends up happening. So both of them end up dead regardless. So eventually Ben is to make his way crazily back to the home, and so now they're basically effed. At some point, Barbara is to mention about her car, but it doesn't have keys in it, and Ben is like, I don't care that your car doesn't have keys. Where is the car? Because we need to get the F out of here. Like, Ben is probably going to figure out, or Ben or somebody is going to probably figure out a way to maybe hot wire this car. And so basically it's a moot point. But all of a sudden we start having these zombies, as well as once before when Ben was trying to hold some zombies off of trying to making it through one of these doors or one of these windows. Tom goes and slices a lot of the fingers that are trying to grab onto Ben, and then Ben eventually goes and is able to get this gun and starts to shoot some of the zombies and scare them away. But then now there's zombies coming through again, and they kind of easily crack through one of the windows, and now they're like, dude, we need to get the F out of here. We need to come up with some kind of plan. And so, like, Ben is trying to hold off one of the windows, and so, like, Ben is screaming for Harry to grab the gun, and he doesn't. He doesn't give a like, so, eventually what ends up happening is Ben ends up just grabbing the gun for himself, shoots Harry, and now Harry is going back down to the cellar to go and see his daughter before his daughter ends up turning into a zombie, which they end up saying, like, yeah, like Harry's daughter ended up getting bitten by a zombie, and Ben is like, dude, I'm not gonna touch that girl. She's going to turn into one of these things, obviously, because she's very sick. She's gonna turn into one. Like, I think before in the other versions, they just say that she's really sick, but then eventually there's that huge surprise that eventually this girl turns into a zombie, and like, oh no, that's such a huge surprise. So, we have Helen that goes down into the cellar too, to like try to like have them protect themselves, to eventually have uh, uh, Harry's daughter go and eat his own arm off, and then Helen's down there going like, "Oh my God, my daughter's a zombie!" And so all of a sudden, we have Helen's daughter that goes and takes this one like sharp lawn like digger thing, and she ends up continuously stabbing her own mother in the chest multiple times. And then the kid goes up in the house and is almost trying to go after Ben because Barbara is basically just, she ends up going into the mob of zombies because eventually one of these zombies grab her from this window and just start to like pass her around, and you never actually get to see what happened to her ever. You just see her getting tossed around and whatever, and you just see her vanish. You just see her disappear. You don't know if she's dead, alive, whatever. I'm like, wait a minute. In the other versions of this, like I would see Barbara like like winning in the end. I would see her eventually just going and surviving compared to everyone else, but you just see her vanish in this movie, which bothered the crap out of me. I'm like, wait a minute. I want a guaranteed death. I want to make sure that every single person is to die in this movie. I don't want no off camera death. I want to make sure everyone is dead. But they didn't do that in this movie. So I was kind of ticked off about that. I wanted to know exactly her death. I want to see it. I want to see it. Like, I don't like off camera crap. I just don't. It bugs me. So, what eventually Ben does, because there's no other way out of this, Ben goes into the cellar and locks up the cellar, and then eventually he goes down to the cellar to start to see that Harry is to start to pop up and be like, I'm zombie. So Ben then shoots Harry multiple times in the head because he already shot him in the chest, which led him to go down to the cellar to kind of grasp to his daughter before he died. And so then Ben, who is to see uh, Helen kind of just there, just kind of like, yeah, I'm dead. So Ben is like, I'm just going to shoot her in the head just so that way I won't have to later. So he shoots her in the head. And so Ben all of a sudden is just to sit back and wait. So all of a sudden we have multiple reports going on the TV, kind of talking about things, talking about something about Venus and weird kind of like their things about how like this all came about and weirdly enough like what they're going to do and all this stuff. So they talk to the sheriff, and the sheriff is kind of talking about things, which it seems like this report of the sheriff where he's kind of talking about things. I'm like, man, this weirdly reminds me of the Dawn of the Dead remake movie where you had the sheriff kind of like doing this dialogue and kind of talking about what they're doing. I'm like, man, this feels very familiar to like Dawn of the Dead, the 2004 one, I think, where the sheriff is on the TV kind of talking about what they're doing. Anyways, so we have the sheriff and a bunch of like common folk. And here's the thing, the sheriff isn't even in his sheriff gear. He just has this like, it looks like he's like a detective, but he's a sheriff. It was so confusing, but I guess he had to like rush to get all of his gear to start having to like combat this whole zombie apocalypse thing. Maybe it was his day off, I don't know. So all of a sudden the sheriff and a multiple bunch of hillbillies or whoever all start to comb through these lands and start to go through and start shooting up all these zombies that are around this house. And Ben is starting to hear that, and so he's like, okay, maybe there's some resistance here. Maybe there's a way to survive. So Ben starts to get out of the cellar, and he's like, okay, like maybe I'll survive. And so all of a sudden, Ben is to try to head out of the home almost. And so all of a sudden, like the sheriff is to hear some sounds going on in the home because Ben hasn't come out of the home yet. And so they just see a person in the shadows. They don't know what it is. They don't know, like, but they see a person through this window. And so the sheriff is just like, okay, like, make sure you shoot that thing right between the eyes. And so here's what happens: they end up killing Ben by shooting him in the head, and he wasn't a zombie. And so they just put a hook into his body and drag him into this big, massive fire and burn him. And I'm like, oh my god! So Ben wasn't actually a zombie in this version of this movie, but they kill him off anyways. And I'm like, oh my god. Like, that was like the worst possible thing. And I don't know if this was the same version of Black and White or not, but I was like so heartbroken where I'm like, Ben could have made it out of here and been like the one to make it out. But I guess in this version, they're like, dude, everyone dies in this version. Everyone is going to get killed. No one is going to make it out of here. And just enjoy that movie for that, of the ending where you're like, ah, oh, Ben! I would have liked him to survive at the end of this, but I guess, oh well, it's not going to happen. So, yeah, that's just how the movie just plays out. I kind of went through the credits to see, like, if there was like an end credit thing at the end of this, or there was some kind of something different from whatever. But I didn't see anything. And I wonder if there was probably an end credit scene, but I'm not going to go ahead and recheck through any little second bits of trailer to or end credits to see if there's any little thing or whatever. But anyways, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Oh, and I hope I covered everything, but there was probably the whole Tom and Judy thing. I probably didn't clearly understand all of that, but things happen. With that said, yeah, like, probably little details here and there. Didn't get 100% what. Nah, good enough. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.